Hello, friends, and my dear viewers. I welcome you for the current episode, wherein I am going to continue my discussion on ecological adaptations. Friends, I remember that I concluded my earlier episode with physiological adaptations of hydrophytes. We have completed the adaptations part with regard to hydrophytes totally. And now we are going to focus on the xerophytes. Basically, the ecological adaptations of xerophytes. The plants which are living in dry or xeric condition are known as xerophytes. Xerophytic habitat can be of two different types. They are physical dryness. In these habitats, soil has a little amount of water due to the inability of the soil to hold water because of low rainfall. Friends, you understand this? Physical dryness means the soil has a little amount of water because of inability of the soil to hold water due to low rainfall conditions. Right. The next one, the physiological dryness. In these habitats, water is sufficiently present, but plants are unable to absorb it because of the absence of capillary spaces. Capillary spaces. Friends, hope you can understand the difference between these two types, the physical dryness as well as the physiological dryness, wherein in one condition, due to lack of water or due to low rainfall, the soil is unable to hold water, and that is the condition. Whereas in another habitat, the water is sufficient, but the plants are unable to absorb due to the absence of capillary spaces. And examples for physiological dryness be the plants in salty and acidic soils, right? Therefore, based on adaptive characters, xerophytes are classified into three categories. They are ephemerals, the succulents, and non-succulent plants. Right. First of all, let us see what ephemerals means and what they are. Right. Ephemerals, they are also called as drought escapers. Drought escapers or drought evaders. So, friends, I think the words itself reflects the meaning what ephemerals means, that the drought escapers. So we can put it in these lines like ephemerals are the plants which complete their life cycle within a short period. Ephemerals are the plants which complete their life cycle within a short period, preferably or maybe a single season. So, if it is implied that ephemerals are generally a single season growing plants, right? A better example, dear friends, for ephemerals is Argemone mexicana, a plant which we can find uh, in many areas. Of course, in subtropics, in our country also, and particularly uh, with reference to Andhra Pradesh as well as Telangana region. And these are not true xerophytes. Ephemerals, generally, what I stated, they are drought escapers or drought evaders. And in general terms, these are not the true xerophytes. Argemone itself, of course, Mollugo, the Tribulus, and Tephrosia. All these can be considered as ephemerals. They are not the true xerophytes. Now let's move to the succulents. These are also called drought enduring plants. Succulents are also called as drought enduring plants, and of course, these plants store water in their plant parts during the dry periods. They develop certain adaptive characters in order to resist extreme drought conditions. Right, friends? And plants like Opuntia, aloe vera, the bryophyllum, and bignonia. These plants can be taken up as the best examples. Now, let us move on to non-succulents. Friends, non-succulents are the plants which are drought resistant plants. Of course, we have classified the xerophytes into three groups, which are ephemerals, the succulents, and the non-succulents. In this context, or in this regard, non-succulents are or they are only, these are called as xerophytes. Of course, ephemerals and succulents, they are not considered as the true xerophytes, but non-succulents are called as true xerophytes. They face both external and internal dryness, and they have many adaptations to resist dry conditions. Casuarina, Nerium, Sisyphus, and Acacia. They can be taken as the better examples for non-succulents. Friends, think you got a clear picture or a clear idea. Though the xerophytes are classified as the ephemerals, the succulents, and non-succulents, it is the non-succulents which can better be called as the true xerophytes, as they only have the potential to face both external as well as internal dryness. Right. And I am going to give a beautiful diagram, dear friends, portraying the plants like aloe vera for succulent category and Sisyphus for non-succulent perennial plant category. Friends, now let us move on to the adaptations part. We all know, friends, in our earlier episode also, while dealing with the adaptations in hydrophytes. We discussed about various kinds of adaptations that are basically required or necessary in those lines. Now we are dealing with the morphological adaptations of xerophytes, and in particular, now we are dealing with the root system. So, the root system in xerophytes is well developed and is greater than that of shoot system. The root heads and root caps are also well developed. In xerophytic plants, the leaves and stem are covered with hairs are called trichophilous plants. Friends, I think you should note this point. Trichophilous plants. Okay, trichophilous plants are the xerophytic plants with the leaves and stem covered with hairs. Covered with hairs, and the examples can be the cucurbits, the cucurbita members. Okay, and coming to the stem. Stems are mostly hard and woody, and they may be aerial or underground. They may be aerial or underground. The stems and leaves are covered with wax coating or covered with dense hairs. And in some xerophytes, all the internodes in the stem are modified into a fleshy leaf structure called phylloclades. Friends, we come across all these words like phylloclades, etc., while dealing with our various kinds of modifications that we are going to study in +1 or +2 standards, and particularly while dealing with the root modifications, the stem modifications, the leaf modifications, etc. So I think you very well know about cladodes and all, and right, Aponisha is the best example for phylloclades, right, friends? Phylloclades are nothing but the modified fleshy leaves, right? And in some of the others, single or occasionally two internodes modify into fleshy green structures, and they are called as cladodes. Cladodes. Phylloclades, they are generally um, they are the xerophytes, where all the internodes in the stem are modified into a fleshy leaf structure. And in some others, either one or occasionally two internodes modify into fleshy green structures, and they are called as cladodes. And asparagus is the better example for cladode category, right? And in some plants, the petiole is modified into a fleshy leaf-like structure called phylloid. Phylloid, dear friends. I repeat once again, it is phylloid. Phylloid is nothing but a petiole which is modified into fleshy leaf-like structure, and Acacia melanoxylon is the suitable example to deal with a phylloid. And I am giving diagrams for xerophytes like Aponisha, Acacia, etc., so that you can very well understand what all these things and what all the morphological adaptations that have been taking place, right? In the diagram also you can clearly see, my dear friends, for succulent xerophyte, the specific part, that is phylloclade, I am giving Aponisha as example. And for non-succulents, this caparis, the cladode for asparagus. And to deal with phylloid, I am presenting Acacia melanoxylon as an example, right, friends? You can find all these things in the diagram which I am presenting here. Now let us move on to the leaves, the leaf part, the adaptations that are taking in the leaf. Friends, leaves are generally leathery and shiny to reflect light and heat. And in some plants like euphorbia, acacia, ziziphus, and caparis, here the stipules are modified into spines. You all know, friends, of course, as I earlier stated that while dealing with various kinds of modifications, you may come across with various technical terms that we are right now using. Okay, the entire leaves are modified into spines in Opuntia or reduced to scales in asparagus. I mean, scale leaves in asparagus. And now, anatomical adaptations. Presence of multi-layered epidermis with heavy cuticle to prevent water loss due to transpiration. In my earlier episode also, dear friends, we have come across the word cuticle. Cuticle is the outermost layer that is covering the epidermis. And if you go through the anatomical adaptations in xerophytes, the epidermal part, if we observe, it is basically a multi-layered one, and moreover, it is covered with a heavy cuticle. Because, dear friends, xerophytes means basically the plants which used to live in severe drought conditions with a low amount of receiving rain, I mean water, receiving water, either through precipitation or from any other source. In order to withhold or in order to use the water judiciously, it has to adapt certain things, and in that way, the epidermal part has been divided into many layers. So you find multi-layered epidermis here, and moreover, it is covered with a cuticle, which is a heavy one, which is a heavy cuticle. All these things are because of to check the loss of water from the plant by the process of transpiration. Friends, we all know that transpiration is definitely necessary, and sometimes it is also called as a necessary evil also. And many of you from biology stream, you can recollect the statement. Transpiration is a necessary evil. I think in this context only that has been stated. So transpiration should take place, should definitely take place. But whereas in case of xerophytes or the plants which are under severe drought conditions, they have less water to survive, and in that particular conditions, and in order to check the rate of transpiration, there is a necessity to take, to adapt specific measures, and in that regard only, while dealing with these non-succulents, and if we observe that epidermal layer, we find this kind of adaptations. That is presence of multi-layered epidermis with heavy cuticle, and that is to prevent water loss due to transpiration. Now, hypodermis is well developed with sclerenchymatous tissues, and sunken shaped stomata are present only in the lower epidermis with the hairs in the sunken pits. Friends, I think we have dealt with this word sunken stomata. Generally, we find them in only xerophytes. Stomata, sunken stomata is nothing but the presence of stomata, and that too when they are embedded in structure. You find deeply located. They are deeply located in the leaf surface, and that's why they are called as sunken stomata. All these adaptations are only to check the rate of transpiration or to control the rate of transpiration, right? Scotoactive type of stomata found in succulent plants. Friends, a typical word here I used, it is a scotoactive type of stomata. So friends, I need to make clear for you because people from various disciplines hope follow my episodes. So it is my responsibility to clear that what scotoactive means. Friends, generally stomata, there are two types. One is photoactive, another one is scotoactive. The word itself indicates, dear friends, photoactive means whenever the stomata they are active in presence of light, they are called as photoactive. Now we are using a word as scotoactive. Scotoactive means, my dear friends, here light is not required, and in the absence of light, and definitely, and we can, in general terms, that is nothing but during night times. Here the stomata they are active or they keep open during nights, my dear friends. During daytimes we have extreme temperatures. So temperature is one of the factors that influences transpiration a lot. I think many of our viewers might be knowing that light and temperature have enormous influence over the process of transpiration. So here the stomata are scotoactive type of stomata in xerophytes. All these modifications or adaptations are generally to check the rate of transpiration or to check that very less amount of water being given out from the plant. That is the general idea. Of course, friends, vascular bundles, they are well developed with several layered bundle sheath. Yeah, here also is the same reason. Why several layered means in order to minimize the water loss. And mesophyll. Mesophyll is well differentiated into palisade and sponge parenchyma. Friends, we know that while dealing with, students or people from biology background, they all know well while dealing with the anatomy of leaf. Uh, we find these structures. I mean, parenchyma generally, of course, here I am stating that mesophyll is well differentiated into palisade and sponge parenchyma, whereas we come across these palisade and sponge parenchymas exclusively dealing with the internal structure of leaf. Either it is a monocot leaf or a dicot leaf, right? In succulents, the stem possesses a water storage region. In succulents, the stem possesses a water storage region. Friends, here I am giving a beautiful illustration of transfer section of a nerium leaf, so that you can find all these parts which I have dealt with, like the thick cuticle, the multi-layered epidermis, the palisade parenchyma, of course the sponge parenchyma. Friends, while following this diagram, you can clearly understand. Now I'm not going to discuss about the internal structure of leaf, dear friends. So at the same time, I need to clarify how palisade parenchyma looks like and how sponge parenchyma looks like. This pillar-like structures or pillar-like things you find in your transfer section is a palisade parenchyma, and the parenchymatous region with a large vacuolated portion, that is called a sponge parenchyma. Of course, you can see the stomata also with the guard cells and the pits and the trichomes, etc. Friends, you can understand these things and you can see these things very clearly through this transfer section of a nerium leaf. Here I am providing you, my dear friends. You just go through it. And now I think it's enough, and let's move on to the physiological adaptations, dear friends. Physiological adaptations. Most of the physiological processes are designed to reduce transpiration. Of course, friends, that is the thing we are observing from our start of the episode. Everything is to check the rate of transpiration. That is the main concept or central idea. Most of the physiological processes are designed to reduce transpiration, and life cycle is completed within a short period, and particularly with reference to the ephemerals. Friends, I think it's sufficient for us to deal with the xerophytes, and now I think it's time for us to move on to the another category, that is mesophytes. If time permits, I'll finish the topic mesophytes, dear friends, or else the conclusion part will be done with the next episode. So now we are moving to the other category, that is mesophytes. Friends, the plants which are living in moderate conditions, that is neither too wet nor too dry. In one of my earlier episode, and in general terms, I said that all the conditions, that is the temperature or rainfall or the cool effect, etc., they're all found in equal levels. I said earlier. And now, technically speaking, mesophytes, they are the plants which are living in moderate conditions, that is, experiencing neither too wet nor too dry climates. And yeah, so only they are called as mesophytes. And for example purpose, dear friends, we can take the general land plants like the maize, the hibiscus, etc. These are the general examples, my dear friends. Of course, many of them are, most of them, generally we see they are the mesophytes, right? And coming to this morphological adaptations part, and particularly with root. The root system is well developed with root caps and root hairs. Of course, stems are generally aerial, they're stout and highly branched, and the leaves are generally large, broad, thin, with different shapes. Now, coming to the anatomical adaptations, friends, a cuticle in aerial parts are moderately developed. In aerial parts, cuticle is moderately developed. Friends, I think you are observing it. While dealing with cuticle in xerophytes, it is a thick one. It is a thick one. Whereas here in mesophytes, cuticle and especially in aerial parts, it is moderately developed. That means we have enormous scope or abundant scope for the process of transpiration in mesophytes when compared to xerophytes. That is the idea for the cuticle being moderately developed, right? And epidermis is well developed, and stomata are generally present on both the epidermis. So stomata are present on both the epidermis. So there is a good scope for performing transpiration. And mesophyll is differentiated into palisade and sponge parenchyma, while the vascular and mechanical tissues are fairly developed and well differentiated. I come again, dear friends. Mesophyll is well differentiated into palisade and sponge parenchyma, and vascular and mechanical tissues are fairly developed and well differentiated. Right. Friends, next is the physiological adaptations. And of course, all physiological processes are normal. Temporary wilting takes place at room temperature when there is water scarcity. Temporary wilting. Wilting is nothing but folding, dear friends. It is nothing but folding. Here, temporarily, leaves used to fold at room temperatures, and that is because of the scarcity of water. And tropophytes or plants which behave as xerophytes at summer and behave as mesophytes or hydrophytes during rainy season. A most important thing, dear friends, you make a note that is about tropophytes, and the tropophytes are those plants which behave as xerophytes in summer and behave as mesophytes or hydrophytes during rainy season. Right, friends? Friends, think it's time for us to conclude our present episode, and in our next episode, we'll deal with epiphytes. So, hope you all enjoyed the session, my dear friends, and let's have our next episode. And I thank you all. Thank you all for your participation.